But is there any story behind that?
Oh, I'm driving this Lamborghini. I'm on this trip. I'm on this 5-star location. You get it? You almost get into this depression. Like, it felt like the biggest middle finger to me. He always liked me or whatever. I thought it was potentially going to be marriage. Kind of naive.
What?
You don't give a fuck.
That's probably the reason why.
And if it doesn't happen, well, then we're single for life.
Yeah, nice. Put it here. So
It's like always the test. It's like,
yeah.
like, is this thing on?
Hope it works. So, hi everyone, and hi Erick. Thanks for coming to this podcast. I'm super excited because I know that we've been, planning this for not a very long time, maybe like a month, and finally we're both here. So, in order for me to present you, I would love to mention a couple of facts so my listeners and your listeners might understand the idea of, a person that I'm bringing to my podcast today. So Erick is a YouTuber, a TikToker, but I would probably say more of an ex-TikToker and a present YouTuber who is 22 years old. You're from Canada originally, and I think you're still living there. I remember when I started preparing for this podcast, I checked your YouTube stats, and it said like you had a month ago 1.64 million followers, but now it changed to 1.69. So congrats to that. I remember watching your different, content on TikTok and YouTube, but for now, I think you're concentrating more on filming, commercial flights reviews. And as a side note, the way we met with Erick was that we met on Web Summit. It's like the biggest tech conference, at least here in Europe. And Erick was one of the guests there. I was very excited to see your speech. I think you had like three of them. And I just reached out to Erick through the Web Summit app. I did not expect that you're going to reply me, and I was super excited when you did, and we got a chance to meet up, in real life and grab a coffee together. So one of my first questions would be, speaking of the Web Summit and your trip to Europe, as a guest speaker, how did you get invited, and your overall thoughts on Web Summit and Europe?
For sure, yeah. First of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. But yeah, it was my second time actually being in Europe, and the way that it kind of came about was I had done a conference called Collision in Toronto. So that's like the smaller version of Web Summit, still run by the same company. So at that conference, I spoke about Web3 and crypto, and I did another roundtable about social media, but it was mainly about crypto. That was like the main stage talk. And I guess they were super happy with the turnout at the stage talk and also the roundtable. So then after that, they pretty much hit me up a week later saying, hey, do you want to come to Web Summit? And I was like, yes, because everyone had been telling me like Web Summit's 10 times bigger than Collision. There's so many more people. It's one of the biggest conferences in Europe. So I took the opportunity. And then thankfully at Web Summit, they actually allowed me to have the main stage talk as a social media piece, because that's like my specialty. So it was super enjoyable. And then on top of that, Europe as a whole, I love Europe. It's, in my opinion, I find it better than the West, but maybe just because I grew up here. I just like the cultural things. I like, the food's way better. It's way healthier. I just like the architecture, and just the entire vibe of Europe is way better, in my opinion.
Would you ever consider actually moving to Europe? And if so, which country would it be?
So I've actually been playing with the idea a lot recently. I'm really debating on it. So the first option was going to be Portugal. That was when they had like their crypto benefits for like the visas. Now that doesn't exist anymore, but I'd still say Portugal's probably number 1 or 2. Barcelona's up there, Amsterdam's up there, and then Montenegro is also on the list because apparently it's easier to get citizenship there, and there's tax benefits. It's like 0% personal income tax, so that's a nice little thing. But the only issue with that is I don't think English is a very widely spoken language there. So I'm not sure. I have to do more research. It's really wherever I can get a visa, because that's the main issue. Yeah.
Right. I think a lot of my listeners and followers, they know that last year I spent half a year living in Croatia because they allow you to get this so-called digital nomad visa. So I'm sure you won't have any problems of getting this one, at least. Because, Montenegro and Croatia pretty similar to each other, so maybe that would be another option for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to go to Croatia. I've never been yet. And then I was also looking, apparently France has a visa too for young people. And apparently all you have to do is just write a small little essay as to why you want to be in France and why you think it's a good country. So I'm like, oh, this can't be that hard. Like maybe France is the option. Who knows? As long as I'm there at some point, I think that's the end goal. It doesn't really matter where.
Absolutely. I think you could just tell them like, "Oh, I love French wine and I would love to see Eiffel Tower every single morning when I wake up." So I'm sure they will get you a visa straight away.
Yeah, I mean the only downside is I barely know French. I know a little bit of like Canadian French, but that's not the same as France French. Apparently, I've heard stories of my friends from like Quebec or Montreal are fluent French speakers here. They'll go to Paris or France in general, and the French people kind of look at them and they're like, "What are you speaking? Like this is not our elegant French. This is some butchered French English garbage," which is kind of funny.
Yeah, but actually it's a nice link. Canada and France, they have a lot of things in common, at least language, so probably it's a good option for you too. And speaking of, back to the Web Summit, like one of the talks you gave about your path, about the tools that you use, as a creator yourself. So I mentioned briefly in the beginning that now you do mostly, videos about commercial flights, your reviews on them, like comparisons. And how did it happen? Like, how did it all started with those, airlines? And do they reach out to you now themselves, or you still do that?
Yeah, so that kind of happened by accident. I kind of fell into that. So when I first started social media like 5 years ago, before I had any followers on any platforms, I always wanted to do travel content. That was always like where my head was at because I watched Casey Neistat on YouTube, and that was kind of the dream for me. And then did a bunch of other things, and then last summer, I believe it was, I was in Rome with my friend Lucas, and I had planned to film a video called "I Traveled to the World's Smallest Country," which is Vatican City, because we were in Rome. So I was like, oh, this is a fun video. So I finished filming that, and then I thought to myself, well, I'm here for 5 more days. Like we're flying to another place already on Ryanair. I was like, I heard that Ryanair is kind of a bad airline. So let me do some research. So I started like Googling, and apparently it was the world's worst airline. So I was like, that's a good video. That's a good title, like kind of catchy. So I was like, I'm going to make a video called "I Flew the World's Worst Airline." So I filmed it, came back to Canada, edited it, posted it, and it got like 1.5 million views in a week on YouTube. So then I thought to myself, oh, this is really interesting. It's doing much better than any other content I'm currently doing at this point. Because I was still trying to like figure out what I wanted to do on YouTube. I wasn't sure with like long form, I was testing everything. And then I made a few other videos. And then I made a follow-up video to the Ryanair one called "I Flew America's Worst Airline." And then I did one called "I Flew Canada's Worst Airline," like back to back. Both of those ones did super well too. So then in my head, I was just thinking, like, well, if these are doing well, I may as well double down on this because all the other stuff isn't working. So then I started making a bunch of these single airline videos. And then I was like, okay, how do I make this even better? So then I thought to myself, what if I put like two airlines against each other, and it makes it a little bit more interesting than people just being like, oh, like let's just watch like an airline review. Now it's like, oh, we're doing like the best versus worst, or two bad airlines against each other. Like which of the two is going to be worse? As a viewer, there's a little bit more to watch. I guess it's a little bit more exciting because you're almost putting them in like a head to head. But yeah, airlines don't pay me to do it. It's all out of pocket.
Really? But have you ever reached out to them, yourself, saying like, probably I would do a 5-star review, but you get me like a business class flight from Toronto to Hong Kong?
Yeah, so I've reached out, but they just don't like working with YouTubers for the most part. Like, so the primary, I guess, demographic for them is Instagram and blogs. So I just don't post on Instagram very much because you don't get paid directly for just posting. So I was like, it's not really worth it if I'm running it as a business. But I started like a newsletter slash blog, so hopefully that picks up. The only airline that has given me anything was a Canadian airline called Porter. So they gave me a free round trip flight from Toronto to a place called Calgary and then back. But every other airline hasn't responded. Um, but funny story too is one of the airlines has started doing, I guess, social media campaigns with a lot of Canadian creators. So I think I was at a Snapchat event or a YouTube event, and a bunch of my friends were there, and they were telling me about how they got this deal with this airline. They're like, "How haven't you got this deal?" And I was joking to them, saying, "Well, I made two videos called 'I flew Canada's worst airline,' and then, I tested Canada's worst airlines against each other." So I was like, I think that's probably why they didn't
That's
want to
probably
work
the
with
reason
me.
why, yeah.
Yeah, so I was having this conversation with my friend yesterday. He's also like a talent manager and he runs like an agency and whatnot. And basically, like, I'm in this weird position where I have to kind of pick and choose. It's either I could be really non-authentic and, cater to these airlines, even if they're bad, and be like, oh no, they're good. But then at the same time, I'm doing like a disloyalty to my audience. So I'm kind of playing this game where I've chosen that I'd rather be 100% authentic to my audience. And if something's bad, I'm going to say it's bad. But if it's good, I'm going to praise it. And I try to be as neutral as possible going into these videos. Like, even if the title says, I flew Canada's worst airline or I flew the world's worst airline, that's just the title to get people to click. In the video itself, I'm very neutral. Basically, the way I structure it is I present what articles have said, I present what people have said, and I'm just basically saying, let's see if it's true. Let's book a flight. Let's go somewhere. Let's see if all the bad things are true, if it's actually good. But unfortunately, a lot of brands or a lot of people will just look at it at surface value. They won't actually watch the full video for the context. And they'll just see the title and be like, oh no, he's bad mouthing this airline. It's like, no, I'm very neutral. Like, there's been numerous times where I've flown these bad airlines. And at the end of the video, I say, oh, it's actually not bad at all. It's actually pretty good. But just looking at the title, you would probably think, "Oh no, this is bad."
But I watched one of your recent videos about comparing your Lufthansa and Ryanair. I love that you try to keep it very neutral, but I think with Ryanair, it's really difficult to keep it very neutral because it's objectively, it's one of the worst airlines, at least in Europe, for sure. But still, I want you to give, a personal credit from me that it's still very, very nice of you of talking about them in a nice way when they actually deserve some criticism, definitely. And speaking, of your creative path in more general terms, I wanted to ask you about your childhood because, being 27 years old, something life has taught me is that a lot of things, they come from our childhood. Especially with creative people, I always believe that there is some history to that. So before transferring to YouTube, you started on TikTok. But is there any story behind that? Before TikTok, did you film any videos when you were a kid or you had a camera or something like that?
Yeah, so I actually started on YouTube, funny enough, but that failed really bad. So the first time I got my camera was in grade 10. I think I got like a Canon 70D for like my birthday or something like that. And I was obsessed with Casey Neistat at the time, so I was like, I'm gonna make daily vlogs. This is gonna be great. Didn't go well at all. It went terrible. So then I was on and off with YouTube, trying things, and it worked and it didn't work. Overall, it kind of failed. And then it was I'm trying to get the time right. I think it was September or October of 2018. I want to say. I think. I watched like a PewDiePie video about TikTok, and this was before it was even popular. Like it had just changed from Musically into TikTok, and no one knew about it. So it's like, oh, like I'm gonna make a YouTube video doing the same thing, like reacting to cringe TikToks. And then I started making them. I'm like, oh, this is actually kind of fun. Um, and then from I guess September, October, whenever I started to I think it was April or May, had gone from 0 to like 500K followers. And I didn't tell anyone at my school. Like everyone knew I did YouTube, but then they knew I stopped, but they didn't know I started TikTok. And the way people found out was one day I was like, I remember vividly. I think I was in my history class. Pretty sure it's history. Um, and then some kids were like, "Oh, I saw your TikTok video." And then in my head, I was like, "Okay, but you have TikTok too then," because no one had this app at this point. It was very, very low key. It was just starting. And then it kind of scaled from there. And then once June hit, I got verified. I think like June, no, it was May, like May 20th or May 21st of like 2019. I got verified. So I was like really one of the first people to get verified on the platform, which is hilarious. And then I went from 500K to 2.5 million in like a week and a half because I did some like super clickbait videos. Looking back, it was totally just baiting followers. And then I was in this weird position because I was like, oh, I need to figure out what to do here. And then I had to like come up with content strategies, and all that. But I guess circling back to like your original question about like childhood is I was never artistic as a kid, which is funny. Like I in grade 9, I almost failed art class. I never picked up a camera until grade 10 when I was 15 or 16 years old. I never really had interest in like, movies, TV, whatever. I always kind of had an interest in social media, I think, because I just consumed it so much and it seemed cool and interesting and like a new technology. But yeah, like growing up, I only played sports. I did American football, soccer, which is your guys' football. I played ice hockey from I think like 4 years old until 16 or 17, and then track and field. So I did a little bit of everything. But yeah, definitely different from someone who would think is doing social media or like being artistic or whatnot. But yeah, like I always tell people who are trying to get into social media or want to start it, and sometimes they'll have self doubt. They would say things along the lines of, "Oh, I can't do this because I never had experience in this, or I don't know how, or X, Y, and Z." And I just tell them, I knew nothing when I started. I kind of just figured it out myself. Like if you're passionate about something, no matter if it's social media or whatever it is, if you're passionate about it, like you can figure it out. And YouTube and all these other platforms these days, there's so much information out there that everything that I know now is either from trial and error or through YouTube videos. That's pretty much how I figured everything out.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you. But coming back to the childhood point, the reason I'm asked, I remember you mentioned to me during our, private conversation at Web Summit that you did sports as a kid. Sometimes I see this correlation between people who were, into some athletic sports, that they have this drive to continue, trying different things, not giving up when some hard things, come along the way. Would you say that it helped you in your, YouTube career, in your creative career?
I think, yeah, honestly, I think like the competitiveness for sure. And I think like, especially when I played hockey, as much as it was a competitive sport in Canada, for the most part, coaches are very much trying to build you into being like a good person as well. So like they would teach us like mannerisms. Like if whenever we go to like a team event, team dinner, it's like be polite, use your manners, dress appropriately, dress in suit and tie, like carry yourself well, like be respectful, all these things. But then also like teaching you hard work. And I think the biggest one for me was track and field. I think that was the one that I connected with most because I love team sports. Like team sports are great, but you could always kind of fall back on your teammates in a way. But when you're playing an individual sport like track and field where it's just you doing like your sprinting or whatnot, if you lose, it's your fault. If you don't do well, it's because you didn't train hard enough. It's one of those sports where you're forced into accountability if you want to do well. Because obviously, like if you don't care, you're just not going to perform. You're not going to train, and like the results are going to show. And I think it was grade 9. I wasn't at grade 9. I did track and field, so I was 14 or 15. It was like the first year of high school, and I basically just did it for fun. And I think I got 6th place and 7th place, and I didn't do amazing. I did like average. And then the following year, I was kind of annoyed at that in a way. Like I always been competitive, so I'm like, like 6 and 7, like this is garbage. This isn't good enough. So then the following year, I actually started training, and then I went to something called OFSA. So basically, the way it works is like you have a competition in your city. If you do top 2 in your city, you go to your provincial or your like region. So I lived in like Northern Ontario, so it's like all the cities in your region will then compete, and if you're top 2 there, then you go to the province. So then you compete in the province to be the best there. So then from grade 10 to grade 12, I always made the provincial competition. But yeah, like I think that does come from sports being competitive, and then like in social media, it kind of carries over because it's one of those things where you are in control of your fate. Like if you want to make a lot of money or you want to get a lot of views or whatever it is, grow your followers, like you're in control. It depends on how much you want to put in the effort, how much you want to learn. And I think, yeah, I draw a lot of similarities from sports to this.
But do you think luck plays one of, not the crucial role, but like a big role in that? Because one of my next questions was, do you remember like exactly that one viral video that, went viral on TikTok and basically made you a person who you are today in terms of your popularity and followers?
Um, I wouldn't. I mean, you could call it luck, but I don't think so. I mean, you could call it luck in the sense where if you don't understand it at the time, but looking back, like at the time, I was like, oh, like why is this doing well? But now looking back, I understand why. I think like yes, you could call it luck, but I think ultimately like there are reasons why something does well. When it comes to social media, like it's not random at all. All the platforms really look for is can you keep someone on their platform because that's their business model, right? Like Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, no matter what social media platform, like it's a free to use platform, but you're the product because they're selling you ads. Like that's their whole business model is showing you ads. So the longer you're on there and the longer you're seeing ads, the more money they're making. So the content creators that can keep the user on the platform the longest gets rewarded with views, and it's like a mutual partnership. Um, Sorry, I kind of spaced out there.
No, you're good. I just tried to kind of like link it to your first viral video
Oh
because I remember you
yes,
mentioned that you had like a whole strategy. So it was not pure luck, I guess. It was your strategy that worked in the end. Am I right?
yes. Okay, so yeah, thank you. So the strategy when I first started was basically like find trends that were going on and then make them better. So the trend then, when I before I blew up, was if you follow me, I'm gonna write your name on my shirt. And I'm like, this is kind of like interesting, but how can I make this better? And I had like a white pickup truck, or my parents did, or like a no, well, we had a white pickup truck and a white Range Rover. So I made a video and made and same concept where it's like, if you follow me, I'm gonna write your name on my dad's Range Rover. So it's like basically taking a concept and taking it to the next level. And I think I repeated that video 3 times, like back to back to back the same day. I just posted all 3 of them, and they all went viral. And I think like looking back, it's because I took something that was pretty basic and made it into an extreme, um, to kind of own that like trend. And then after I did that, people started doing it on like Porsches or other cars, and then that became a trend in itself. So that was kind of the strategy then, and then it's still kind of true to today, where I will look at videos that have been done or trends that are happening, and I usually think to myself like, how can I make this better? But for the most part now, I try and be as original as possible. Like I'll borrow inspiration from other places, but as opposed to just taking an identical concept and recreating it myself, I try and take inspiration from other places, then kind of put it together into something. Like I guess going back to the airline videos, the way I found this head-to-head thing was actually an automotive YouTube channel called Car Wow. So basically, their concept is they'll take 2 cars and they'll like drag race them against each other. And after seeing that video, I was like, how can I apply this to airlines? I'm like, oh, I could put airlines in a head-to-head, and no one else is doing an airline in a head-to-head. So that's what I mean by like borrowing inspiration. Is like looking at different niches or things that are doing well in different areas, and if it's consistently getting views, think to yourself like, how can I take the core element of this and apply it to what I'm doing? Because you can even do that in like cooking, for example. You could be like, I don't know, pro chef versus new chef. Put them in the head to head, see who can make a better dish. Or like 2 friends that are like cooking a cake. Who can make the prettier cake? Like you could take that core concept of like a head to head and put it in multiple different scenarios. And I think it's really important to be able to, as a content creator or an aspiring content creator, being able to like identify those things and think to yourself like, how can I take this little nugget and like put it in my own thing?
And back to your dad's car, like I hope it was not a Sharpie that you cannot wash away. Otherwise, if I was your dad, I would be furious.
No, and that's why it was very clickbait back then, and I don't do this content anymore. That's when I was younger, so I was like, God, I just want followers. Like, this is all that matters. So I do like all the exterior shots of the Range Rover, but because we had a white pickup truck, I used like a washable marker, and all the close up shots on the panels would just be on the pickup truck because I was like, I don't want to risk it, and I didn't tell my parents at the time. I was just like, I'm making this video, and then I would wash it off. I didn't tell them. I'm like, you guys don't have to. If you don't need to know, you're not gonna know. So they didn't find out until the videos went viral. They're like, "Did you do this?" I'm like, "No, I did it on the pickup truck. I showed them the spot. I'm like, look, it washed off. I use soap and water. It's good." Now, I don't necessarily advise people to do that these days because sure you can get a lot of followers, but with short form video, they're kind of dead followers. They don't really do much. The follower count's like very much a vanity metric at this point. Um, Especially if you're doing content like that. It doesn't really matter. And then you're in a position where it's like, oh, okay, sure, maybe you have a ton of followers now, but can you create videos that get views? Because if you have a ton of followers and you have videos that don't have views, that looks really bad. So people are like, what happened here? Did you buy them? And yeah, so I try and avoid that these days, but like 18-year-old me thought, oh, this is a great idea.
No, I think it's still a great idea, but once again, it really depends whether you have a car that you can use, and that your parents don't get mad at this. Yeah, like, you talked about your creative path, and it started on first on YouTube, but then kind of like slightly moved to TikTok. A lot of people that I know, probably myself including, they want to grow their following, they try different formats, different things, but maybe because I'm a little bit older than you, sometimes I feel like TikTok is not my platform. And the next question was, why did you stop doing, videos on TikTok? Because I know that in some countries, there are different speculations when it comes to TikTok, how they use the user data, or which kind of music available out there. So why did you stop doing videos on TikTok and transition to YouTube?
So first of all, I want to go back to like your first point where you said that you don't know if you should be on TikTok because of like your age necessarily. My mom and like every parent that I know uses TikTok, and like there's audiences for it. I think it's still a great platform. The reason why I switched off it personally is because in Canada we don't have any monetization on the platform. So in the US, the UK, Italy, and a few other countries, they have something called like the creativity program. So any video over a minute long, you can get actual ad revenue and paid for making videos, which is great. That's how it should be. But in Canada, we don't have that. So basically in Canada, we'd be making videos, or I'd be making videos. Sure, they would get a lot of views, but then you're basically just praying you get a brand deal. So you're just like, because you could go a month. Let's say I make 30 videos in a month. There's a chance that a brand won't contact me. It's the way I like to look at it is I'm putting my fate into someone else's hands, and I hate that. I don't like that feeling of I don't have control of this situation. It's completely dependent on someone else. And in the start, it was fine, right? Like 18, 19, 20-year-old me was, okay, who cares? I don't need a lot of money. I'm still in school. Like, it's not real life yet. Now I'm graduating in June from university. Like, it's real life now. Like, I have to think about my long-term goals, saving for a house, family, all that stuff. And being on a platform where, my fate wasn't in my control and I don't have consistent income, that just wasn't a reasonable thing for me. I couldn't justify doing that. But on YouTube, you get paid per view. So like on shorts, on long form, you get actual money. So it was really just a business decision for me. Like, I don't hate TikTok as a platform. It's more of like a secondary or third platform for me. Like, I'll still upload random short form videos from here to there, but long form videos is mainly my priority just because it's stable income. And TikTok just doesn't provide that for me. And now, if we get the creativity in Canada, I'd probably go back because there's a lot of money to be made. But I can't justify in my position being on a platform and just making content for fun when it's real life now. It's too risky.
Two questions. First, you have a lot of followers on YouTube, and I'm sure you have, managers, connections, with those platforms. Like, have you tried talking actually to TikTok in Canada in order for, for them to solve this problem? And second of all, like, what would you say your biggest income proportion comes from? Like, is it the brand deal or is it Google Ads? Speaking of YouTube, so yeah.
So I have tried talking to TikTok reps. Your community reps, in the nicest way possible, are kind of useless. They don't know. I mean, they're just there for like your day to day. And I don't think I've talked to mine in like a year, so I don't even think I have one anymore. Which is fair. Like I don't use the platform, but yeah, it's they don't really know, and then everyone else you try and talk to is very corporate, so they won't tell you. I mean, I'm on like a talking basis with some people there, and like I've tried asking them, and it's a very like gray answer they gave me, very corporate answer. One of my university classes that I was in, actually, we had the head of marketing or business strategy. We had someone, one of the higher ups at TikTok Canada, and they came in, and one of the questions I asked them was, "Hey, you," and I was like kind of aggressive with the questioning. I said, "You guys have been promising us they used to have something called like, the TikTok Creator Fund. Now it's the Creativity Fund. So, like they're two different things." I was like, "You guys have been promising us like version one of the Creator Fund for 3 years now. Where is it?" And then I said, number two, all these countries are getting this new thing called the Creativity Fund. Why are we not getting that? And the answer he gave me was, we would rather creators focus on e-commerce. Like it felt like the biggest middle finger to me, and I was like, you don't give a fuck about creators. You just care about your margins and your business. And that was one of the things that kind of annoyed me too. I'm like, yeah, I don't give a shit about your platform anymore. Yeah, that was another thing that kind of pushed me over the edge. I'm like, I mean, I don't think he knew I was a creator. I think he just thought I was a student. But like, it just kind of felt a bit insulting. Where I'm like, we're literally the reason why your platform's relevant. We're the reason why you're employed right now. We're the reason why you're getting money and your bonuses. And you're just telling us, oh, go do ecom. You don't deserve to be paid per view. Go sell a product so we can get our commission off of you too. It's like, no, if I'm making content, I deserve to be paid per view. Like, that's how I see it.
But it's not fair, right? Like, why the US gets this creative fund and Canada not? It's also a very good economy, an English-speaking country. Like, do you have any idea why this might be happening?
I think it's mainly the Canadian government. I think it's more of like a actual legal thing with the Canadian broadcast laws and stuff like that. Maybe I'm wrong. Like I'm completely speculating because I don't have a concrete answer. I think it's more of like an actual legal issue with the government. I could be wrong. Because right now the Canadian government is pretty much full censorship mode. We introduced a bill called Bill C-11, which is bordering communism dictatorship, which is kind of terrifying. Uh, yeah, so basically the way the bill works is they're trying to only promote Canadian content, but they don't justify what Canadian content is. And then on top of that, like in Canada right now, if we go on Instagram, we can't look at news outlets from another country. It's blocked. It's censored. It literally says you cannot view this. You cannot view this profile because it doesn't comply with your country's regulations or something. So I can't even look at BBC. I can't look at a news body from another country without it being censored. Like it's bad. Like we're bordering communism, and like people are still asleep to this. Sorry, I got way off topic from your other question in terms of like
No, no, no. Sure. I just wanted like to insert this, like I'm speaking with someone from Canada, not Russia or North Korea, but it feels like now you guys have a lot of similarities, which is surprising.
yeah, it's really quite insane. And the fact that content creators, we've been vocal about it and they just don't listen. Like I've had friends go to a hearing with some of the people who are trying to push this bill, and they told me like trying to speak with these people, like they want nothing to do with us, like they don't care. And it's really frustrating because it's like we're such a big economy, and yeah, they're trying to keep us. But at the end of the day, it's if they try and do all this censorship, we're gonna leave. Like you're gonna lose all your creators because, for example, like why would we stay here if we could go to the States and get a visa and make money there and not get censored? It's great. Because yeah, like I guess trying to like segue it back to the first point about like your second question, with like the money, it's like that would be a huge income stream for me because right now the primary one would be, I mean, I'd say like AdSense and brand deals are pretty comparable in terms of overall revenue. The only difference is like AdSense is a lot more consistent because like on a monthly basis, I know what I'm going to be making. I know what's going to be happening. But brand deals are kind of like that boost. So it's like, oh, here's like a big amount of money at like one time. But it could be sporadically. There could be a month where I don't get a brand deal. There could be a month I get three. There could be 3 months where I don't get anything. Um, so I think like consistently to total, AdSense would be number one. Brand deals number two. And then I also have like Snapchat monetization. So that's like another smaller income stream as well from posting stories.
Mm-hmm. Would you say like most of the brand deals that you get, it's brands reaching out to you directly, or you have a manager or the agent who helps you with that?
It's a little bit of both. Most of the time, it's just inboxes. So like they'll have a, yeah, when you sign like a management, they'll have an inbox kind of set up for you. So like the manager has visibility and you have visibility. So whatever kind of comes into there, is primarily what it is. Sometimes they will reach out themselves. Other times, if let's say another talent on their roster gets approached for a campaign, but they're not necessarily a good fit, then the agent will say something along the lines of, "Hey, like even though this creator doesn't work, how about this creator?" So those are the main ones, and there's also some other platforms where you could get brand deals. So there's one called in Canada. I don't know if it's global. I think it's Canada and the U.S. for sure. I don't know if it's in Europe yet. It's called hashtag Paid. Basically, their business model is like you sign up for the platform, they'll have like campaigns. So they act as like a middleman. So, like a brand will give them the budget, they'll put out like the creative brief. You could apply to be on this campaign, and they'll select you if you fit the requirements. So, that's like another kind of way I get brand deals too.
We spoke about, managers, income streams, like everything. And the new year is coming here, like 2024. And I know a lot of people are dreaming of having, a job, if we can call it. I know it's a real job being a YouTuber, being a creator. So let's imagine like somebody wants to become next Erick. Let's call her Erica. Your prediction regarding the social media platforms, like which one would you say personally you would recommend using now? Or either to follow trends or try something completely different, and new. Like if you want to become as successful as you are, what would be the best advice you could provide out there for your listeners?
As much as I don't like TikTok for the monetization reasons in Canada, I'd still say TikTok's the best platform to start on. Or Instagram Reels. Yeah, I'd say Instagram Reels or TikTok is the best. I think it depends on what you want to do though. So I find Instagram's a little bit better for stuff if you want to do like travel or like I don't want to say fashion. It I find on average the content I see on Instagram is a little bit more polished, if you want to put it that way, and TikTok's a little bit more like raw and just random wild stuff. I'd say those are the two best platforms because it's the lowest barrier to entry. And whatever content you would make on like TikTok or Reels, you should also just like throw it up on YouTube Shorts and all that stuff. I think YouTube long form, it's the most valuable skill to learn, but it's very hard to learn first. Because by learning short form, it's the biggest transition I noticed from short form to long form is it's the same elements. So you still need a good intro, you still need a story, like you still need all these like elements. But as opposed to, let's say, a 45-second video, you now have an 8-minute video. You now have a 20-minute video. So you have to take those skills and figure out how to extend that into a 20-minute YouTube video sometimes, or however long it is. And it's very hard. And I found it very difficult. But I think short form has the lowest barrier to entry, and it'll teach you all the essential skills. So I'd say starting there. And like TikTok, it's especially because so many of the people listening to this are probably from a country with the creativity program or with all these benefits. It's a great platform for that because you can make initial monetization even if you don't want to be like a big content creator. You can do UGC stuff. Like people are making 10 grand a month just doing UGC content for brands where they'll just make a bunch of like short videos promoting products. They'll get like $200 a video. People could do like affiliate links where they just all their content is just promoting Amazon products. Like there's so many different things to do. It's hard to, I guess, give one answer to fit all. It really depends on like what your vertical is going to be, what your content is. But I guess like be as general as possible if you're just trying to get a lot of followers, be like a public, I hate this word, but like public figure. It's so cringe to say that. Or like an influencer. I also hate that word. If you're trying to do that, yeah, TikTok. But if you're taking it more of like a business approach, still those platforms where the content you're going to be making is a little bit different. And depending on your niche or what you're doing, you could see more followers, you could see less followers. I guess the thing to think about is how widespread would your audience be? So like if you're just trying to be like a general influencer, um, you're probably gonna have a higher follower count because like no one's they're just there for you. Like whether you're funny, you're crazy, like whatever you're doing. But if let's say you're doing gardening content, the amount of people who are gonna follow like a gardening channel are gonna be lower. But that's not a bad thing. Like you could still have 1 million followers, for example, and be a really big gardening creator. It's all about like perspective and like what niche you're in. But yeah, it's really hard to give like a one answer fits all because there's so many different like little factors that go into it. I've realized.
And speaking about of, less material, less tangible things such as inspiration and finding your niche, what would be your advice to those people who are just trying out this field? They might feel a little bit lost, but they still are very like they feel eager in order, they feel eager, they want to penetrate this creator economy industry. Like how do you go about those things? Like inspiration, do you create on a very strict schedule or you do whatever you feel like in the moment?
I mean, I have like I'm gonna say a loose schedule. Like I try and do a long form video every Saturday. I try and do like 4 long form videos a month. When I was doing shorts, I mean, you should do one a day. Like it's very reasonable to do one a day. A lot of people will be like, "Oh, it's so hard." It's like not really. It's maybe at most an hour of your day. Like instead of watching Netflix, like go make a video. Instead of like scrolling reels and just watching content, go make content. In terms of like picking a niche, from bouncing around a bunch of different things and like getting burnt out at certain points, is do something or try and like remove the labels in a way. Like some people are like, I need to only do this. Like if you want to be a variety creator and you want to do a bunch of things, do it. Like whatever you have the most fun doing and whatever you're most passionate about, you should do. And don't feel too stressed about like, oh, like one day I want to do cooking content and the next I want to do fitness. Like instead of kind of getting into this headspace where I'm like, I'm picking between food and fitness, it's like, no, now you're just doing wellness, right? Like there's always a way to categorize it, but I think like, yeah, like doing what you're most passionate about, where you have the most fun doing, otherwise you're going to burn out or you're going to hate it. And if like that could be anything. Like there's content creators that all they do is knitting or like embroidering or crochet because that's what they're passionate about. Like whatever it is that's like your superpower, let's say, like the one thing that like you really love that you're really good at, like that's the thing you should do because one, you're going to have fun doing it. Two, it's not going to feel like a job. And three, you're probably not going to get burnt out because you actually enjoy doing it. And I think that also carries across a lot on video because if you're truly passionate about something or you're truly enjoying it or you're having fun doing it, in your body language, your mannerisms, the way you speak, the way you carry yourself online, people are going to be able to relate to that and see it as opposed to if someone's faking it. I think people have gotten like really good at pulling out bullshit or not these days. So the more authentic you are, the more relatable you are to an audience, and the better you're able to connect with them. And I think that's the most important. I think worry less about followers, worry more about just like views. Because sure, you could have like 100,000 followers, still a lot. Like I know
Of
sometimes
course. If you can imagine this crowd in real life, it's actually a lot of people.
Yeah, like I have a hard time sometimes like in I'm not gonna pretend I'm like innocent here. Like I definitely fall into the trap of sometimes like comparing myself to others. But then you got to realize it's like, oh, my content's different from theirs. Like my audience is a little bit more niche, or my audience is. I'm not trying to be this A-list celebrity in Hollywood with paparazzi. Like I'm just like a knitting creator or whatever. So just trying to like stay in your lane. And I guess an interesting perspective is instead of trying to beat others, just try and beat yourself. So if you're focusing on others all the time, like you're focusing on the wrong competition because it's not a zero sum game. Like they're gonna always be doing what they're gonna do. Like it's good to kind of like see what they're doing, but not like obsess over it. But if you're trying to every day like better yourself and like make a better video and beat yourself every day, like that's who you're against at the end of it. Like it's you versus yourself. It's one of those industries. Like if you want to grow, it's like every day have the goal of making a video 1% better because over 100 days you've increased 100%. Um, so it's one of those things where whenever you're making content, you're making videos, whatever you do is like try and just get like 1% better each day because like that'll compound over time.
I love your advice. I think I can personally relate to what you're saying. But I heard, like you said, sometimes you also like fall into this trap of comparing yourself to others. Is there any name that you can mention, publicly that you are kind of like jealous whenever you feel like you want to do something similar? Is there anyone in particular?
No, it's not so much like individual jealousy. It's more so like looking at creators and be like, I want to get a million views a video. Like I'm jealous of this. But it's not like a person in particular. Like it's not something like that. It's I guess it's more like I don't know. Like if
Results related.
yeah, it's more results related. Like I'll be like, look at all these people that are getting like millions of views. I'm like, why can't I get these millions of views? And then I have to like pull back. I'm like, well, they've been doing it for 7 years, and I've been doing it for 1 year full time, or not even full time. I've been doing it for 1 year part time. So then it's like just like trying to pull myself back and like give myself perspective. It's like, hey, they've been doing this for years. They have 1,000 videos. You have 70 videos. Like they have, you know, 930 more attempts at this than you have. So when I fall into those moments, I just try and like pull myself back and be like, okay, why am I feeling this way? And like trying to like re encourage myself and be like, hey, you've gotten this far in a year. I don't know. It takes a lot of grounding because I think with social media, it's very easy to compare yourself to others. And I find that happens most when I'm consuming more than I'm creating, when I'm just like watching content and like just on reels, just like next one, next one, next one. You get it. You almost get into this depression because you are comparing yourself to others because all the videos you see is like, especially on reels, it's like, oh, I'm driving this Lamborghini. I'm on this trip. I'm on this 5-star location and blah, 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 blah. But the funny thing about that is like my bullshit radar has gotten pretty good. And like there's a lot of these like affiliate creators who are like, I'm making $10,000 a day. And I like look through their stuff and then there's 6 people doing the exact same business model of like promoting like I make $10,000 a day. It's like, okay, where's the single piece of organic content you've made? And then their fallback's always, I'm a high ticket affiliate marketer. It's like, okay, so show us the organic content you've made. And I don't know, like a lot of it's like bullshit, just like showing off the highlights, right? Like people don't really share their lowlights, and I feel like it's really hard. It's really really easy to fall into I wouldn't say like a depressive state, maybe like a small depressive state of like comparing yourself to others, and in those moments you just have to like disconnect. And yeah, I always find it's like when I'm overly consuming content, I get into these like unhealthy mind states. So I think it's very important to like get off socials as much as possible. One of the things that I found that actually helps is in my phone now, I have time limits. So on Instagram, I actually don't even have TikTok on my phone. I deleted it. But Instagram, I still have it because it's like my friends or whatnot. I set like time limits of 15 minutes. So every 15 minutes, I get like a solid screen being like, you've reached your time limit. Do you want to continue? And I think that's a really good way to like break up the scroll because it's really easy to like lose 15 minutes scrolling. And when you have this like hard notification, it's like, oh shit, I've been doing this for 15 minutes. And then you kind of have the conscious decision of, oh, do I need to go back to doing my work or doing something productive? Like, obviously, if you've done all your tasks for today and like you want to be lazy and like you've earned it, sure, keep scrolling, whatever. But having those like little, I guess, check boxes or barriers has been really helpful to me too.
I can really relate to this. Let's call it like a short depressive episode after scrolling through all those Instagram reels and stuff. But I'm sure if people start being a little bit more conscious about how they spend their time, especially on social media, life can become a little bit better. And, speaking of being jealous of either particular individuals or results related things, you know, we're tapping into this AI reality with Sam Altman, OpenAI, and all those other apps that can really change our lives in the upcoming years. Maybe even they've already did in some ways. Do you feel like the creator economy can benefit from that, or it's going to change? Like, do you use any AI tools yourself, or not?
I think there's a lot of pros, obviously a few cons too. I think it's really good for like editing softwares, lowering the barrier to entry because like you could do voiceovers now and do like AI can edit your whole video. Now, I don't know if it's AI is good enough to make content that's really human-like because I think you do need a human element. But one of the things I'm actually testing with AI right now is testing out an AI influencer. So me and my buddy were doing like a little side project where we want to see how if we could grow an AI influencer on Instagram. So we're just like we're not telling anybody what it is. We're not promoting on any socials. We want to see if we could go from like 0 to like 10,000, 50,000, or 100,000 just by using AI. So we use like Mid-Journey to create the images and a bunch of these other things. And it's been kind of terrifying to see because like I've always like you've always heard of like oh AI could take your job, AI could do this, and we were messing around with these programs and creating these images, creating these videos, and we're having this conversation. I was telling him it's like we're basically if this works, we could basically create as many influencers as we want, make content for a year, and we don't have to worry about someone getting burnt out. We don't have to worry about I hate to say it, but like morality. Like we could do whatever content we want and we don't have to worry about someone's, hurting their reputation, hurting people around them or whatever. Like they could it's a really weird dystopian thing that we're trialing. But so far it's been very kind of scary and eye-opening because now I look at Instagram and I'm like, how many of these people are real? Like obviously there are real people at the majority, but based on like the images that we've been creating, I'm starting to look at other images on Instagram and I see them. I'm like, is this a real image? Like, is this a real person? And that's been kind of scary to see. Now, can that be used for bad? Yes. But can it also be good for good? Yes, too. Um, I think it's too early to say how it's going to play out for the overall economy. I mean, I think that it's going to be a big factor. But I think for the most part now it's a positive because of all like the editing softwares, all the new technologies that are helping creators create is really good. But yeah, like who knows what 5 years are going to be? Who knows what's going to be in 10 years? But I do kind of want to try and be a first mover if like an AI influencer thing does become really popular. I'd rather be one of the first people in the space to do it or be at least in that initial wave. So that's why I'm testing it now. So we started posting content 2 days ago. So we're going to do it for like 30 days, analyze the results, see where it's at, and hopefully scale from there.
So it's really fresh.
Yeah, it's very fresh.
Ah. Can you tell us how many followers you've got so far?
Let me check. I'm actually curious because I haven't looked today. I didn't look yesterday either. But yeah,
You said it's just been 2 days, so
yeah, we're starting it fresh from 0. We're only at like 10 followers, but our reels are at like 209 views, 270 views, and 257. That's kind of normal. Like whenever you start a fresh account, it's kind of going to be slow. So we're kind of just trying to populate with a bunch of content, see if it'll pick up in the algorithm. I don't. It's like completely just like a thought experiment and just testing it. We don't really have high expectations. It's more like, oh, if this does well, we'll keep going with it. If it doesn't do well, figure out why it didn't do well. But But yeah, it's only been like 2 days, so we're not too worried. We're gonna keep seeing how it goes.
Well, keep me posted. I'm curious. And of course, I wish you luck. I don't know what's the name of the account, but I'll keep an eye on, AI generated accounts. Maybe it's going to be one of yours.
Yeah, maybe one day. We'll see.
We'll see. I'm super glad that you mentioned yourself that you are still studying at university because I don't know whether people grasped it or not, but you are doing, content full time or part time. I don't know how you call it, but you're also studying university. As I remember, it's your last year. So how do you go about, managing your time, about your classmates that now I'm sure they know that, you're a popular guy on the internet. So how does it work?
um, I mean, it's surprisingly easier than people think. I mean, okay, it's not easy. It was harder in the first few years of university because I was taking like full course loads or four classes a semester just to be able to balance it all. This last semester, I only took 3 classes and it was like completely online and self-taught, so it was very manageable. Um, but in terms of like classmates, I just starting off, you just don't tell them. Like if people are gonna find out eventually, because eventually you'll start making friends. Like, oh, what's your Instagram? It's like I don't have personal Instagram. It's just like it's just my public one with like 200K. So it's like here it is, and they're like, wait, what do you do? And then that kind of gets around. Luckily, I was in a program called like media production, so there's like a few other kids kind of did social media in there. Everyone's like kind of involved in the media industry. In terms of like the actual like balancing of content, school got put on the afterburner sometimes. So basically, my rule of thumb was like, all right, got to get the videos done for the week or whatever I needed to get done. Then I would do the content, and then like kind of going all the way back to Web Summit. I literally just ditched school for 2 weeks. I was like, I'm like, I had midterms before. So in my head, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, I'm basically just going to miss 2 weeks of lectures. The slides are posted online, so I could just go back and do the slides. I'll do like the assignments when I'm abroad, like whatever. So I was like, I think a trip to Europe's a little bit more important. So I just ditched school for 2 weeks of the semester and just went to Europe, which is hilarious.
But like if it wasn't YouTube or TikTok, do you have an idea who might you want to be like an engineer or I don't know, like do you have any ideas of if it wasn't about social media? Do you have any other alternative path?
I probably would have done some sort of engineering because I really enjoyed physics in high school, surprisingly. Like I was been good at pretty much every subject. I was good at math, but I didn't like math in particular because the situations or the questions for math was just it's a lot of hypotheticals and it's a lot of just random things that I'm like I can't imagine this in my head. But then when I did like physics, it's still math, but you're calculating like acceleration, lift, drag, like all these like different factors. And in my head, I'm like, oh, I can imagine like a plane taking off or like a plane accelerating. And you could like look at your equations or you could look at your numbers and be like, okay, if I have my acceleration as -1,000, that doesn't make sense. So it was a kind of a subject area where I could take my skills of math, but then also apply it to like real life situations. I'm like, oh, this is actually cool and interesting. Like I find this fun. So I probably would have done engineering. Um, I was, I mean, my parents were both in like the biology, like medical field, and growing up, I feel like as a kid, you kind of want to follow in your parents' footsteps a little bit. Then I was like grade 9 biology. We had to dissect a frog, and I just turned white, and I just couldn't do it. I was like, this is disgusting. I can't look at this. And I remember vividly, like looking at my teacher. I'm like, I can't do it. And he's like, well, then you're gonna fail this assignment. I'm like, then fail me. And I literally just walked out of the classroom. I'm like, I can't do this. And that's I think another thing about me is like I've always been a kind of person where I'm very in touch with myself and I won't do something if I don't want to do it. Like I don't care. Like even in that scenario the teacher's like, I'm gonna fail you on this project. I'm like, I don't care. Like I'd rather fail this project than you tell me what to do that I don't want to do. And I feel like that's happened a lot of times in my life where people are like, well, here's an ultimatum. I'm like, I don't care. Like I'm gonna do what I know makes me feel best. And that's another reason why like I love social media is because I feel like I'd be very bad in the corporate world because I I don't want to call it ego, but I don't do well when I have people forcefully telling me what to do. I mean, I think that comes from like sports and like being yelled at all the time and like do this play, do this, and it's just like over time you just get very numb to it. It's like I don't want to do this. So it's like I don't know. I've gotten very in touch with myself over the years, which is a nice skill.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. But maybe it also has something to do with your zodiac sign. I remember that you're a Gemini. I know that you are very self-sufficient people. At least I'm speaking on, depending on experience of having a boyfriend who's also a Gemini. So maybe it's something to do with that. I don't know if you're into astrology or not, but who knows? You just talked about your, alternative paths. Can you share any plans, any biggest, big dreams for the upcoming year or years?
Um, so obviously I have like long-term goals. I think the biggest long-term goal right now is just financially like afford to buy a condo in full, like not really have debt, buy like an apartment or a house in full. That's kind of like my main goal right now. Um, it's hard for me to like say like a super long-term goal because like looking back 5 years, I was starting social media. So like I could have never been like, oh yeah, this is where I'm going to be in 5 years. It's really hard for me to even like predict where I'm going to be a month from now because there's times where I will just like randomly get an email. It's like, hey, do you want to come here? And like the next day, I'm like on a plane to a location. I guess for me, this is like the starting in January. It's gonna be the first time in my life where I'm not doing school. Like I'm gonna be fully done university finally. So the first 2 weeks off of January is where I'm gonna take my vacation. I'm planning to work until like the end of this year because it's Q4, so I'm trying to like maximize Q4 revenue. So I have like two more long form videos to do. I have like 9 shorts, two brand deals that I need to film by like in 15 days, which is a little bit of a task. Um, so the first, yeah, so the first 2 weeks of January, I'm going to be taking off just to reset and just like come up with new ideas because the ad revenue is like so low the first week of January, so there's almost no point of even making content those first 2 weeks because like brands are coming back to office, they don't know what their budgets are, and all that stuff. But I guess like next year, my main goal is just like really focus on my YouTube channel and just see how much I could grow it on a consistent basis now that I'm actually doing it full time. So a lot of there's gonna be a lot more travel, but I kind of want to start doing videos that are I want to do like the airline videos still because that's kind of like the bread and butter, which is like the core audience wants. But I want to start doing like mini I don't know if I would call it like mini documentaries, but videos that have a little bit more like story and a little bit more emotion. I've never been the kind of person where I don't crave like the whole LA like YouTuber lifestyle where it's all about money. Like I kind of want to like tell stories in like a filmmaker way, but then using YouTube as my platform because from being like in media production and in school, I kind of learned that I don't want to go the mainstream route because we learned all about like how to make a movie, how to pitch a movie, how to pitch a show, yada yada yada. But then you have to pitch it to like a studio and you have to go through people and then they'll like tell you, oh, we don't want this, we can't do that, and I hate being told what I can or can't do. Like if I have a creative vision, I want my vision to be my vision. I don't want it to be things to be tweaked because, oh, someone could get offended by this or someone might not like this. It's like, no, I want to tell it for what it is. Like, if this is the story or if this is what the real discussion is or this is what the topic is, like, I want it to be authentic. So I don't know. I guess to like stop my rant about it, I just want to make like longer, bigger videos that are, I guess, more narrative based and more film like. That's kind of my goal for the year, I'd say.
I really respect this approach because it feels like you try to add as much value as you can to the content that you produce. Because I think I can understand when you talk about, LA YouTuber lifestyle, when it's more about some commercial goals rather than something, like adding value to the society, basically. And speaking of setting goals, I would personally would love to know, like, do you set any particular goals in terms of like numbers, or it's more like I want to create a documentary. I don't know which one, I don't know where, but it has to be done, during the next year.
Um, I mean, obviously, like setting soft goals with numbers is good. I don't really care about followers anymore, if I'm being honest. Like followers. I'd rather just like a smaller authentic audience than like 10 million, for example. Um, and I think like even then like 1.6 or 1.9 or whatever it's at now, it's like that's a lot of people. Like I don't need more. Um, Obviously, I think like soft goal would be like every video consistently getting 250K views. That's like something I would want. But I think when you focus too much on numbers, you could kind of again fall into that like depressive state because I've had videos where I'm like, oh, I love making this video. This one's gonna do so well. 20K views. I'm like, oh, that sucks. And then you get hung up and you get like depressed over it. So I think like the main goal would actually just be like trying to make like the best content possible. Because I think if you're just focusing on making a video the best it could possibly be, the numbers will kind of follow.
So you don't have like a Notion notebook or a diary where you write everything down you want to achieve in the next year, right? Like it's all in your head.
Oh no, like I have a Notion, but I think I did it like literally the other day. But I mean, some of them, I wouldn't say they're like super deep goals. It's just like, oh, this is like the revenue I want to make. They're like very just generalized. But yeah, like my Notion has so many just different pages of just ideas. Like whenever I have an idea, I'll literally just open up my Notion. I'll just like type it out just so I don't forget. So yeah, like my Notion is full of like scripts and ideas and a ton of stuff. It's literally, yeah, it's like a notebook and just like a mind dump. It's like, all right, everything goes in my Notion.
It's like a Pandora box. You'd rather not open it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I could open it, but if someone saw it, they'd be like, what is this place?
And, before I let you go, we spoke about numbers, views, Notion, ideas, I think almost everything, right? But I haven't spoke about your personal life. Because, some of our listeners, viewers, they might be your biggest fans. And maybe some of them would love to meet you in real life and, get to know you as a person and a little bit closer. Like, can you share with us, like, how's it going on your dating life?
On my dating life? In daily life or dating?
I see you're blushing. It's the first time during our interview. I'm curious to see what's in there.
Like my daily life or dating life?
Dating life.
Currently very single as of 7 months. I don't know. I think I've definitely been in relationships over social media and I've learned a lot. Like I think my first relationship when I first started social media was like very, very public. So like just always making videos with them, which isn't a bad thing. But then it's like always awkward when there's a breakup because it's like, oh, where's this person? What happened here? And it's like, yeah, like a lot of people want the drama, I guess. In the last relationship, we did like public content and then she stopped wanting to do it, which I respect, completely understand. So then that kind of stopped. I don't know. I think right now I'm in a position where it has to be like the right person because I think like when you're in a relationship, that's arguably the person you're closest with outside of your parents. And like if you're, I guess the same age we are, or if you're in a serious relationship or if you're living with them or whatever, like they are literally the person you are closest with. So if they are super negative or, a bunch of like things like that, it does affect you as a person. So I don't know. There's like a lot of the things that I've learned where it's like a lot of these boxes kind of need to be checked where it's like, oh, they need to be positive. Like they need to have ambition. Like they need to be able to mentally stimulate me. Like I need someone who will like, they have goals themselves. Like they're going to push me to be a better person and I can push them to be a better person. But yeah, I think it's also difficult with how much I do travel for content. Because even my parents sometimes, they're starting to get better with it, but it's hard for people to understand where it's like, hey, I'm going to go fly to 5 different cities in Europe over 12 days and make like a bunch of videos. And like my ex was kind of disrespectful towards that in a way. Like whenever I'd be editing, she's like, oh, your stupid job. You're just going on vacation, flying. I'm like, no, like this is my job. So like, I've realized like I can't be with someone that doesn't respect it. And then there's a lot of insecurity. It's like, you're cheating on me there. I'm like, no, I'm literally like, whenever my day on travel is like, wake up, fly, walk around the city, and by 8 o'clock I'm asleep because I'm just so dead. And after doing 6 flights, I'm so exhausted that I can't even like think about going out. But yeah, like I guess on the relationship front, very single. Um, but I don't know. I think it was also like the last relationship was a 2.5 year one. So like we were living together. It was like 2.5 years. So I thought it was going to be a very long term thing. I thought it was going to go much longer. I thought it was potentially going to be marriage. I didn't know. I mean, looking back, kind of naive. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I've just been enjoying the single life, just taking it one step at a time, bettering myself, and it's weird because like there's some days where I catch myself. I'm like, I want to be in a relationship, and then there's other days where it's like, well, if you force it, you're gonna find the wrong person. It's not gonna be natural. And then I hear so many people, and I've had so many conversations with people. Like one of the so like I don't know if you met them, but at Web Summit, there's a company called like Wiser. It's like a bunch of German guys. Like I'm friends with them now, and like one of them had his girlfriend there, and I was just like talking to them about their relationship, and like they were like again echoing to me like, hey, we were friends for years and years and years. He always liked me or whatever. And then, we had a few months apart. And then when we both weren't looking for something, that's when it happened. And it was weird because like the few weeks prior, like I'd been watching like videos and like just like time and time again at like random times, it's like the same thing. It's like it'll happen when you're not looking. So now I'm just like trying to like work on myself as much as possible. And, when it eventually happens, it happens. And if it doesn't happen, well, then we're single for life. Who knows? We'll see.
As long as you are happy, that's totally fine. And I see all the stats saying like more and more people consciously, they choose to stay single for multiple reasons. So maybe that's going to be our new reality. But I'm sure, you are a Gemini. Now I know you guys. You're going to find your relationship, and I'm sure it's going to be happening soon. Even myself, I've never dated before, like seriously, before I turned 26 2 years ago. And we've been friends for 7 or 8 years. We met in university, but it happened accidentally after many, many years in a whole different country. So it happens when it happens, I agree. But if there is someone out there watching us wants to, make a first step, what would be the best way to approach, like, probably the best platform, like YouTube comments or Instagram DMs?
Honestly, probably Instagram DM. But I don't know. I think the hard part too that I've realized is I don't want to like come off as arrogant or entitled, but when you kind of whether it's like a business or social media or whatever, like when you get to a certain point where you have, consistent income or you have a follower base or whatever, you kind of unfortunately get into this headspace where it's like, is this person talking to me or being with me because of me, or are they wanting something? Because, like I hate to say it, but it's like if someone's with me, I can literally teach them how to become a creator. Like I can basically hand them the keys to the kingdom and be like, here's a career for yourself. Have fun if they want to do it. So it's like one of those situations where it's like I kind of have to be consciously thinking to myself is like, is this person authentic or non-authentic? But yeah, I guess going back to your question, just like, yeah, Instagram. But for me, like I've kind of gotten really good at like judging someone's vibe, and like you could kind of tell based on like the questions they ask or the environment they ask the questions in, and just like how they carry themselves. Like it's there's no way to like describe how but like deep down you can't. Yeah, you kind of have this like gut feeling where it's like, okay, this isn't working, or I know you might have ulterior motives. Just because like I've seen it enough times now where I'm like able to kind of like get that vibe.
Right. Well, anyways, ladies, take notes. He said Instagram DMs. And yeah, we'll talk to you like maybe soon, and you will update me that you have any girlfriend.
You become a dating podcast?
Yeah. Actually, I love talking about relationships, so I can talk another hour about that. Because I love psychology and what drives people, especially, within the relationship fields. But we'll leave it to another episode. I'm sure if we get a lot of people who love this episode, we will record a second one and can explore any topics people really, really enjoy listening to. So I think we're going to wrap it up for now. And once again, I want to thank you so much for being here. It was really a big pleasure talking to you. I really hope that you enjoyed as well. And once again, if people love it, I'm sure they will do. Let's plan a second episode sometimes in 2024.
Oh yeah, it was a blast. Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, like if people wanted to hear about dating, we could do a whole dating episode. I'm fine with that. I'm the kind of person where I'll talk about anything, so I'd love to come back. Thank you for having me.
Sounds great. We can do it this way. Like now, Erick is single, and in a couple of months' time, when you get a girlfriend, it's going to be a whole different aspect of how's it like, being back into a relationship. To hear your feedback, maybe you can do a video, comparison to girlfriends, your ex and your new one.
That could be
I don't know if it's
funny.
going to be too harsh. Just an idea.
Yeah, for sure, for
Just an
sure.
idea. Cool. Well, thank you so much once again, and hopefully talk to you soon. And
Thank
have a
you.
nice
Have a
day
good
in
one.
Canada.
You too. I mean, it's late
Thank
there,
you.
but have a good one.
Thank you.